Alright guys, we're going to go over the notes for solving two-step equations. Two-step equations are very similar to one-step equations, but instead of one steps, there's now two. Parts of a two-step equation, it says label the coefficient, constant, and variable in the two-step equation below. So this goes back to our vocabulary from before. Remember that a constant is going to be the number that does not have a variable attached. So that's our constant. 12 is also a constant, or 13, sorry, is also a constant. X, which I'm going to put a little box around here. X is our variable. And 16 is our coefficient. When we were taking vocabulary notes, I told you those words were going to come up over and over and over again. And honestly, when you're trying to memorize how to solve a two-step equation, knowing the difference between a constant and a coefficient is going to be very helpful. Okay? So if we look here for the steps to solving a two-step equation, the first step is going to be to undo the addition or subtraction with inverse operations to zero out the constant. We're trying to get rid of the constant. Okay, so you're going to use addition or subtraction to get rid of the constant first. See if I can make that focus. That looks better. Okay, and then our second step for a two-step equation is going to undo the multiplication or division with inverse operations to eliminate the coefficient. We're always going to get rid of the constant first, then the coefficient. Those are our two steps. If an entire side of the equation is being divided, undo that first. So my only big exception to the rule of add, subtract the constant, multiply, divide, coefficient is going to be an example like number 4, where the entire expression is being divided. If that's the case, you have to get rid of the division before you move on. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and look at these together. I've got number 1, which is 4x plus 13 equals 9. My constant is plus 13. My coefficient is 4. And remember, my goal is to get my variable isolated, to isolate that variable x. So in order to get rid of plus 13, which is my constant, I'm going to subtract 13 from both sides. I get 4x is equal to 9 minus 13 equals negative 4. Okay, so step 1 was to add or subtract the constant, which we did. Step 2 is going to be to multiply or divide by the coefficient, which in this case is 4. So I can go ahead and I can divide by 4 on both sides, and I get x is equal to negative 1. When I plug that back into my equation to check my answer, I get 4 times negative 1 plus 13 equals 9. 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. Negative 4 plus 13 equals 9. I get 9 equals 9, which is correct. So I can move on to my next problem. It doesn't matter what order the constant and coefficient are. So you're not doing the second number or the first number, because as we've seen already, the equations change orders. They put the variable in the middle, the front, the end. It doesn't matter. The goal here is to remember I'm going to isolate my variable by adding and subtracting my constant and then multiplying or dividing by my coefficient. So in this case, my constant is 6. If there's no sign in front of it, it's positive. And we know the opposite of plus 6 is minus 6. So we're going to subtract 6 from both sides. My 6 minus 6 equals 0, leaving behind my x divided by 5 is equal to negative 10. Now I have x divided by 5 equals negative 10. The opposite of dividing by 5 is going to be multiplying by 5. And I get x is equal to negative 10 times 5, which is negative 50. Okay. We can do the same thing with our decimals. If you don't like decimals and you want to get rid of them, all you have to do is count what the highest number of decimal places are. So notice there's one decimal place here, one decimal place here, and one decimal place here. In order to get rid of those, we can go ahead and we can multiply our entire equation by 10. Multiplying by 10 will move our decimal point over to the right one space. So we get, move that decimal place over 1, we get 6x. Move that decimal place over 1, we get minus 15. Equals, move that decimal place over 1, and we get 18. So if you don't like decimals, you can easily get rid of them at the beginning of the problem. If there had been 2 decimal places, we would multiply by 100. And if there had been 3 decimal places, we'd multiply by 1,000. And notice you're just using distributive properties. So you're multiplying by 10 to every place. You can't skip anything. Okay? Alright, so now I have a two-step equation. I need to go ahead and get rid of my constant by doing the opposite, which is adding 15. I get 6x is equal to, and let's see, 15 plus 18 is 33, I believe. Right? 20, 33, yeah. Okay, and then I'm going to divide by 6 on both sides, and I get x is equal to, it's going to give me a decimal, and that's okay. I just needed to get rid of the decimal to make it easier to solve the problem. It's okay if the decimal comes back, because I'm just going to go ahead and get my handy dandy calculator out, and I'm going to say 33 divided by 6 equals, and that's just 5.5. I want you to pause the video and check your answers on these, but in order to keep the video a little shorter, I'm going to keep chugging along. I told you earlier that example 4 was going to be the weird one. We can't get rid of this plus 12 because this 12 is being, it's minus 12 because this 12 is being divided by 14. The only way to finish this is to get rid of this divided by 14. So we're going to multiply the entire equation by 14. Okay, when I do that, my 14 divided by 14 equals 1, and I'm just left with the numerator of my fraction, which was x equals minus 12. And then I need to figure out what 16 times 14 is, which if I use my calculator is 224. The opposite now of subtracting 12 is going to be adding 12. And I get x is equal to 236. Once again, I want you to pause the video and go ahead and complete that check to make sure that is correct. Sorry. Now, in order to get rid of a fraction, we're going to multiply by the reciprocal of the fraction. But we don't need to get rid of the fraction until we get rid of the constant. Because remember, we are going to get rid of the constant first and then the coefficient. This fraction of 7/8 is the coefficient. We're still going to get rid of the constant first. So we're going to say minus 4. The opposite is plus 4. I get 7/8 x is equal to 14. Okay. Now we can get rid of the fraction by multiplying by the reciprocal. Remember, the reciprocal is the upside down of the fraction. So I'm going to multiply both sides of my equation by 8 over 7. I'm flipping this fraction upside down. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay. I get 8's cancel each other out, 7's cancel each other out. I'm left with just x is equal to, I can say 14 divided by 7 is 2. So that puts a 2 up here at the top, canceling those out, and 2 times 8 is 16. Alright, last one we're going to go ahead and do together, and then I'm going to have you guys practice on your own, is going to be this last one, number 6. We need to look for the constant. Remember that the constant is the one that is going to be no variable all by itself. So in this case, the constant is negative 24. The opposite of negative 24 is positive 24. And I get negative x is equal to, and I know negative 15 plus 24, I'm pretty sure that is positive 9, but I would go ahead and check because I'm tired right now, so always handy to use your calculator. Negative 15 plus 24 equals, yeah, it was 9. And I knew that, but like I said, sometimes it's good just to use your calculator to double check your math, especially if you know that you're stressed out or tired or whatnot. Now, some people might think this problem is done, but this problem's not done because I don't want to know what negative x is. I want to know what positive x is. This negative sign tells me this is negative 1x. So I need to get rid of that negative 1. I'm going to multiply both sides by negative 1 because I know negative 1 times negative 1 will give me positive 1. And then 9 times negative 1 will give me negative 9. Go ahead and plug that back into your equation and check for completeness. And then I will have you guys challenge yourself by completing numbers 7 through 10. And we'll meet back in class and see how you did.